I'm Mary Baca, and I want to welcome you to my podcast show, Remotely Unique. I'm a licensed counselor in the state of New Mexico, and I actually got licensed in 1994, which before that, believe it or not, people didn't need to be licensed. Anybody could call themselves a counselor and just hang their shingle on the door. By then, I had already been in the counseling field for 4 years and had my private practice for those years, which brings me to a total currently of over 30 years. Man, every time I say that number, I can't believe it. It certainly has gone quickly. In addition to being a licensed counselor, I'm also a holistic practitioner. Specifically, I'm certified in the following. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher Trainer, I'm a holistic kinesiologist, emotional freedom technique practitioner, a psychic intuitive, angel card reader, and a hypnotherapist, and a sound healer also. Not only do I practice all these modalities except hypnotherapy, and that's just because once I got certified, I never did practice, so I don't put those letters behind my name, but I'm getting ready to go through some certifications and trainings that will catch me up to speed. So I just mentioned, I've also created 3 of my own holistic modalities, specifically quantum alignment, Trasoma, and I'm getting ready to pilot another modality called sound dissonance desensitization and resonance therapy. That sounds so clinical, doesn't it? But quantum alignment integrates intuitive aromatherapy, body scanning, so like some medical intuitive things, chakra balancing and harmonizing, and sound therapy, and some other things as well. And then Trasoma is laser focused trauma work, clearing trauma from the body. It's pretty amazing, very powerful. I've had a lot of success with these modalities, and I have actually certified and trained practitioners in quantum alignment and have several that are going through the training now. Trasoma, I'd like to pilot it with a couple more people and then also do the same, start certifying and training people. Very exciting. The reasons I decided to start a podcast show are several. One, I love connecting with people. I'm a professional trainer. In addition to what I just described, I've been creating and delivering trainings for the past 20 years. Sometimes I did that for agencies and organizations that I worked for, but most of those 20 years have been independent of any agency other than Odyssey Counseling, which is an agency I've had for over 30 years. But besides connecting with people, prior to COVID, and now it still is my preference to connect with people in person, we kind of took that for granted, connecting with people. In fact, now even with kids that tell me that they miss school so much, I never thought I would hear them say that, because prior to COVID, a lot of times kids would complain about school. But we're not living in the same day and age that we were last March in 2020. With a pandemic, we have all been challenged to work around our world and lives changing literally overnight. I'm one to try to find a way around things. I don't believe that there are too many obstacles that cannot be overcome. So when COVID hit, I decided I would continue with my trainings and just take them to an online format and develop more. In fact, I'm expanding another of my businesses called Shifting Perspectives Specialized Training Institute, and I have found a building and am in the process of negotiating that building that will be dedicated to the Institute. And I'll tell you more about that at the end of my podcast. I decided to let that devastating change, when life changed for all of us, not limit me, and that I would move beyond any restrictions or limitations or work around them, really, in any way necessary. So back in 2016, to give you an idea of how I even started doing anything like a podcast, back in 2016, I did a radio talk show through a station back in Los Angeles called LA Talk Radio, which I absolutely loved doing. I went out there to watch Taylor Swift perform in concert, which was amazing. And somehow I found LA Talk radio station, and I went and met Sam Hassan. Oh, I probably destroyed his last name. But anyways, I went and met him, looked at the station, and decided that I would start a talk radio show through that station. And when I left from doing that show, I always had a desire to do a podcast show in the future. So here I am. And at some point I may even go video. We'll see how this all plays out. But Remotely Unique is the title of the show. It's also a website where you'll be able to find links to the show and look at what I'm doing with some other projects with myself and various teams. Like I have a holistic team and I have a clinical team of counselors and that kind of thing. So you'll be able to keep up to date on what's going on there. I also have a YouTube channel called Remotely Unique. And so you'll be able to go to Remotely Unique YouTube and watch our shows. So when I created the name Remotely Unique almost 5 years ago, I never realized then how critical of a word remotely would be today. Remotely now has become the way we all stay in touch. But I'm going to choose to look at the positive sides of that. Connecting remotely has allowed me to connect with people all over the country. Oh yes, we've had technology for a while, but people are being forced to use Zoom and other platforms that normally would not have done so. I think this aspect of things is great. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal, but it certainly gives people that usually wouldn't have exposure to things like training and podcasts and different things, it's giving them the opportunity to do that, to connect in that way. And this is actually a great segue into something I want to talk about, which is how powerful the mind is over creating our situation. I always tell people, clients that come see me and just people that I talk to, whether it's in a training, that perception is everything. Oftentimes, people look at themselves as a victim instead of realizing that oftentimes they're a victim of their own creation mentally, which then affects them physically, emotionally, and behaviorally. Now, I'm not talking by no means about things like people who are battling cancer. I am not saying that a person who is suffering and struggling with cancer fits into that realm of creating that reality for themselves. I'm talking more about really kind of anything, but I'll use the pandemic as an example, just because that is heavy on all our minds. Change is constantly going on. And the truth about change is that some people are better at navigating through change than others. Some people just don't do change well. And that's fine in that, if that describes who you are, just meet yourself where you're at. But I would encourage you to look at why you have difficulty with change. Going into the pandemic, people were already struggling with mental health issues. A lot of people. There's lots of things that go on socially and then personally in a person's life that really can cause issues and cause difficulties. And so there were already so many people in that place, and the pandemic just has been enough intensity to kind of push them over the edge. So in many respects, and with many people, the pandemic just kind of made them cross the line, over a line that they were nearing the edge of anyways. And I know that firsthand because not only have I experienced that with clients and various people that I talk to, but so have the counselors and social workers that work for me. We've all talked about that, and I think that's something we have all agreed on. The thing that we also agree on is that we're all, just able, willing, and ready to help people move through that and learn how to have a quality of life regardless of the pandemic or anything else. But back to change. So I always tell people that come into my office that behavior is always an indicator. And I always tell them too, except you can't see the visual, but I have a wall in my office and I say, it'd be like looking at the cracks that are up toward the ceiling and just fixing those cracks, getting spackle out or whatever you want to do to just patch up the cracks. And I tell people, you can do that, or you can look at the foundation. Because oftentimes, if there's cracks up toward the ceiling, there's a good chance that it could have already damaged the foundation, or that the foundation created those cracks. So that's kind of how we are, when people come in and they want to do counseling or mentoring or coaching or anything like that. I use that analogy quite a bit because it creates a visual. And I'm not in construction. I mean, who knows if I'm accurate about those cracks? Okay, that's not the point. So if any construction people want to reach out and tell me, that's not how it is. It really is just an analogy that makes a point. And the point is that, for example, if you have a hard time with change, and I mean a really hard time, because nobody likes what happened, in that time period when we became aware of COVID and our lives changed overnight. Nobody is gung-ho about wearing a mask all the time. Nobody. But some people have a mindset about wearing a mask that's more productive than others. Some people have been able to move with the flow of the change and with the current instead of against the current. Some people move downstream instead of fighting the current and trying to go upstream. So the importance of that too is to look at why you are struggling with change. And what I mean is, it's normal to not like those things. But if you find yourself feeling sad and depressed or even angry, like overly angry, you might want to ask yourself why you're feeling that way with these changes that we've all gone through. Because there's a normal response to things, and then there's an abnormal reaction to things. Responding is something where the mind, body, and spirit process, and then comes behavior, thoughts, and feelings with that. Reaction is more in the moment, or, oftentimes irrational even. And so those are the differences. So you might want to ask yourself, where do you fit in to all of that? Are you a person that has difficulty with change typically? Or do you move through it pretty easily and readily? The thing too is this comes with a package, meaning if somebody finds themselves in reaction mode to change, we'll just stick with that subject. The package deal is that oftentimes their thoughts are irrational. And if your thoughts are irrational, unless you catch them before they turn into behavior, your behavior is going to be irrational. And that's where people then begin to really struggle. Because once a thought and feeling become a behavior, then it starts leaking onto other people and affecting our interpersonal relationships or our love relationships or our work relationships, all of those things, to varying degrees, of course. So it really is a useful thing to stop and think about, how do you deal with change? Where do you fit in based on what I've described today? And you can start with the thought of, yeah, that's probably a good idea. It would really help me to do that, which would be internal focus. Hopefully you don't go to the external focus and think, why should I do that? Why should I think about that? Who cares, Then you're kind of headed off in the wrong direction, because it's not about what you're doing that's going to create a change for anybody. I mean, yeah, it probably would create a positive change for you and your family, but you is the most important part of that sentence. it all starts with us individually. And then it leaks out, right? And it moves toward other people. And that's the thing. It all starts with us. And a lot of times, people are not very good at looking and introspecting, looking at themselves, thinking about where they're at and where they're coming from. Part of the reason is everybody's so busy. And then there's cell phones, and there's social media, and there's the news, and there's games, and all of those things are fine in moderation. But we don't live in a society that's very moderate, right? We live in a society where people are really caught up and oftentimes doing those things in extreme. So I would really encourage you to stop and think about all of this after you listen to my show. And also, don't hesitate to contact me. Remotely Unique has its own website, and like I mentioned earlier, and you can contact me through the website and give me ideas. If there's something in particular you want to hear me talk about, feel free to share that. If you have any other questions, you can also communicate with me through that avenue as well. And I'm really happy that you tuned in today. For those of you that are listening, you can also pull up archived segments off of YouTube and the website as well. So if you didn't get a chance to catch it today, you can catch it anytime. On remotely-unique.com, that's the website address, you'll also find archives from the radio shows that I did when I was doing a show through LA Talk Radio. So definitely take a listen to those. There's some interesting topics. I do a lot of work with first responders and their families. And so there's several interviews with first responders and separate interviews with spouses of first responders. And then I have, I think, an archive there on a show I did and had a guest speaker, Julia Bain, on it. And she talked about effective supervision. I have another woman on there, Candace Thomas, who talked about law of attraction. And I did a segment on there also on using your intuition. I don't remember, without looking at it, what the specific titles were, but they're all there for you to listen to as well. And you probably will be seeing me or have seen me through my other businesses. So I actually have 4 businesses. Odyssey Counseling, which I've had that business for over 30 years. I was I think 23 years old when I started that business. And then maybe older, because I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Could be longer than that. And then I have Resilience Integrative Services, which is my holistic practice. I have Shifting Perspectives Specialized Training Institute, like I mentioned. And I also have Allies for First Responders, which speaks for itself. It's all the work that we do with those amazing individuals, not only first responders, but nurses and radiology techs and medical professionals from the Office of the Medical Investigator and people from the DA's office, all kinds of individuals who have trauma-based careers. And you're going to be hearing more from me on programs that I'm developing and trainings I'm developing to assist those individuals. Child protection is another one. I did child abuse investigations many years ago, and so that population is very near and dear to my heart as well. But anyways, you'll be hearing more about all of those businesses. Please visit my Facebook pages for those businesses and like the page. And also that will help you stay in touch about what's going on with each of those businesses. Definitely there will be more programs and things like that, services that will benefit the community, because the community is important too, and that's why I'm doing this podcast as well, is not just those specialized populations I talked about, but I definitely want to get back on track with working with the community. Before I really started specializing with first responders, I saw all kinds of people for counseling. And then once I started to really specialize, I had to stop taking new clients that weren't first responders. I've really dedicated a lot of my life and a lot of time these past, I don't even know how many years, 10 probably, to working with first responders and their families, and it's absolutely been one of the most rewarding experiences that I continue to have. And I'll always be connected to first responders and doing as much as I can and for that population. All right, well, I'll quit rambling. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Make it a wonderful day. Start with how you choose to think about things. Believe it or not, that makes all the difference in the world. And I will talk to you next Monday, February 29th. Bye for now.